if you would introduce yourself and then answer this question, why are you walking to the summit?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Neal Simon, and I'm running for the United States Senate in Maryland. And sometimes when people ask me why I'm an independent, I start with the story of my childhood, where my mother was a Democrat and my father was a Republican. I turned 18, and I just felt like I should vote for the best candidate. And sometimes I talk about how I've never bought into this construct that there are 70 or 80 different issues with each party on one side or the other of every single one of those. And why can't we all think for ourselves and think which side of each issue we stand on? But today, I think for me, more than ever, it's that both parties have been pulled to extremes, and there are so many of us that feel unrepresented. And as I've traveled around my state and the country, I hear it over and over again. People feel politically homeless. And yeah, there are people digging in the trenches on the right and the left, but so many of us want to do better than that and know we should do better than that. And that's a lot of what has driven me to be an independent. So I'm really excited to be here. It is so energizing to see all of you. We need every one of you. We need all your friends. We need your friends' friends to make the movement happen, just like Joel was describing before. So I'm happy to be here.
Hear, hear.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. You had enough coffee yet? My name is Thea Chase, and I'm running for State House District 54 here in the state of Colorado. So first thing I wanted to do is tell you a bit about that and a bit about who I am, very briefly though. Okay. So House District 54 is about 3.5-hour drive from here on the border of Utah and Colorado. And it's rural, as Ann Diamond was saying before. We have this appreciation for the uniqueness of the rural situation. They took Grand Junction, which is the largest community between Salt Lake City and Denver, and they took it like a donut hole, and they just placed it, and it's a whole nother district. So my district is everything except for that in that county, which means that it really has not a central piece. There's a lot of small towns, and it's very difficult to get to. There's also a piece of Delta County they threw into that district as well. Historically Republican, oil and gas, agriculture, and so that's a challenging district for an independent, for sure. But everyone there, Western Colorado, fiercely independent. There's a lot of bootstrap, picking yourself up by the bootstrap. My background's in economic development, business development. I've spent the last 25 years helping to develop companies, helping to start companies, working with entrepreneurs in small business. And so my passion for this and how I got to this place is because I've worked for 25 years to try to help people's condition change, and I haven't seen it change. As a matter of fact, I see it getting worse. And it is so frustrating, and I think we can do better. And we're not doing better, not because we don't have the tools and not because we can't figure it out. It's because of the system that we're not doing better. And that's super frustrating to me. And so that's why I'm running as an independent.
Good morning. My name's Craig O'Dear. I'm running for the United States Senate in Missouri. Charlie, I've been asked the question you just asked more times than I can count, and I always say it's very simple. I am unwilling to waste my time at this point in my life. Yeah. I was recruited last year, run as a Republican moderate, and I said, I have a great life. I have a great profession. It's at a great place, and to do this, I'm going to have to upset the apple cart. It's going to cost me a ton of money. Got to go on unpaid leave for a year. I love riding motorcycles all around the world. I've got at least one trip a year planned out for the next 10 years. That has to go by the wayside. And I said, the only reason I'm thinking about doing this is because our country's in trouble. We're divided. And that has caused dysfunction in our government. A dysfunctional political system is a large part of what divides us. And I'm only willing to do this is if I can be part of the solution. And there is no chance, none. I'm a confident guy. You can hand me the Republican nomination, or you could hand me the Democratic nomination for the United States Senate, and I jump on that Southwest flight and go to Washington, D.C. and report to my leadership. The notion that I can be part of the change that needs to happen in the United States Senate and in Washington by joining one of the warring sides is utterly absurd. And I'm not doing this just to get a Senate seat. I'm doing it to be part of solving a problem, which is division. I'm a trial lawyer. I'm a business trial lawyer, 30 years. And businesses hire me to win cases. What they really do is they hire me to solve problems. And one of the things you have to do to solve complex problems is establish credibility with either side. And we are, unfortunately, at a place where once you join one side or the other, everybody on the other side automatically assumes you're the enemy. And I said, I'm not going to go to Washington with half the country and half of Missouri assuming I'm the enemy, because I've got Republicans and Democrats who are friends, who I love. They are not my enemies. And I want to get elected to bring them together. So I'm doing it.
Hi, I'm Cory Ellis, and I'm running for State House in South Dakota, District 7. And I've got a fun race ahead of me. There's 5 of us running for 2 spots, and the top 2 vote getters get in. A third of our voters are actually independents in our district. We're used to having independents. We have an independent state's attorney, independent sheriff, and 2 independent county commissioners. So I think it's a great opportunity to now have an independent in the State House. Why I'm walking to the summit, I prefer to think of it as I'm going to blaze the path to the summit so that everybody else can come up behind me and we can get more independence there. So my high school quote was, go where there is no path and leave a trail. That's what I think that we're doing here.
You are all doing something that is so eminently sensible, I mean, especially to us, right? If the 2 parties are the problem, then let's transcend the 2 parties. At the same time, everybody's looking at you saying, wow, you're nuts. So tell us what it's like to go one-on-one with voters, not with the press, not with the party officials, but when you go out and you talk to voters in your respective jurisdictions, what is the reaction that you've been getting? And let's go same direction here.
My experience has been joyful. And one of the reasons it's been a joyful experience for me is that as I'm out talking to voters, it feels like almost everybody reacts with, this is exactly what we need. People know that we need it. So the barrier becomes more psychological about, can we win? Can we win? But people know that our government is not supposed to be 2 teams working against each other. It's supposed to be a group of people working on all our behalf. And in Maryland, there's no real history of independents winning statewide elections, but we're a 58% Democratic state with a Republican governor who is the most popular governor in the country. So our governor, who's a Republican, has a 73% approval rating in our 58% Democratic state. So half our state are non-Republicans approving of a Republican governor. So there's a lot of evidence that there's this big middle out there. And in my race, we have a really weak Republican on June 30th. He had $6,000 in the bank. And the governor, that's that popular, has been much more helpful to us than to the Republican. And my campaign manager, who might be here somewhere, Steve Krim, ran the governor's campaign 4 years ago. And I'm running against a Democratic incumbent who is vulnerable. He's got a 44% approval rating, so almost a 30-point gap between him and our governor. So there are people out there who know that the senator I'm running against has been in office for 52 years, and they don't feel a lot of attachment to him. We've got a weak Republican opponent. We're starting to get a lot of momentum. We're on the air with a television commercial. We're starting to get a lot of press attention. So it feels like it's getting easier, and the reactions are getting friendlier, and we're recognized a lot more, and we couldn't be more excited about the prospects in Maryland to enact your vision, Charlie, the Fulcrum Strategy vision. We couldn't be more excited about it.
I'd like to echo that. I think there's a huge amount of excitement. I mean, that's evident. And you'll go door to door, you'll talk to people. We went through the petition process, and people were very excited about doing something different. And on the flip side of that, though, is they don't know how to make sense of it. And I think that's the challenge, certainly, that I'm encountering. I'm sure many of us are encountering. And I appreciate some of the remarks from earlier in the earlier discussion about how this is kind of a little bit of a long-term, well, not a little bit, it is a long-term play. And so all of the kind of the milestones that we can get to along the way, which helps people to make sense and understand the choices that are now available to them, and what is this independent, what does that mean? Is that a party? What's your platform? What does that mean? You know, they can make sense, and they've got this like framework that they can decide R, decide D, but they can't really get their hands around that. And that, I think, that is my biggest challenge at this point, is how to quickly and succinctly communicate to them what that means with respect to voting for me, so that they can make that decision in November.
I love Neal's comment about joy. The conversation with the voters, that's what sustains me. It's the fun part of this undertaking. And I will say, especially the ones where they start out not necessarily, we start out on not the same page. Because it's just, that sustains me in confirming that we're on the right track. The one story I'll tell quickly that illustrates it, but there's been so many. Humansville, Missouri, I'd never heard of it. My campaign manager has friends there. He said, I want to take you to a group there. There are two dominant people in the room, this woman and her brother. Her brother is radical. And I said, great. And I said, how's he radical? He hates government. He's an anarchist. He's not a conservative, he's an anarchist. I said, okay, I mean, whatever. So, so I go and I give him my spiel, and I kind of shorten it up because I can tell it's about 15 people, and you can tell they got a lot of things on their mind. I can just see it in their eyes. They want to ask questions. And sure enough, the brother takes into a rant. You know, you're running to change government. We need to dismantle government. It was all about tear it down. And I listened, didn't interrupt, just listened until he was done. And I said, you know what, I understand that frustration. And I said, now, I want to tell you, I disagree with about everything you've said, but I want to explain why. And I'm curious when I explain if it makes any sense to you. And I said, I think you're frustrated with the government because it's not been working for us. I think, in fact, when we look back as Americans, our proudest moments is when we've come together and government did work for us. And I talked about those. The space program, building the interstate highway system, electrification of rural America. And I said, okay, regulation. I understand. That's a common refrain. All regulation's bad. I talked to him about the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act. And he just, when I stopped, he just tore into me again. And his sister, the woman who was dominant, she said, now wait a minute, Bobby. I agree with him. Changed everything. So, and then we had a conversation. You know what? And in the end, they were like, you know, this thing you keep saying about finding common ground, you know, the problem is that's not what most people, there are people come in here talk to it, nobody's talking about finding common ground. I said, I get it. That's why I'm running. So.
I guess it's different for me. I feel like what I'm hearing from the people is they're not surprised. We're, like I said, we're used to independence. I think most people pride themselves on their independence. What's the statistic? 42% of us are independents in this country. So why is it a surprise that somebody's running as an independent? They're just happy. They're ready to have the conversation about the issues. It's as simple as that.
So I'm going to beat this hiking to the top of Mount Washington metaphor until everybody's thoroughly sick of it. But you're doing something difficult. If you were to run as an R or a D, it's not easy, but it is more of a turnkey operation. You show up, somebody says, look, here are your big donors, here are the interest groups you need to reach out to, here are the messages that we know work, here are the voters who have to show up. You don't have the benefit of all that. So I'm going to open up to the group. What do you need? What have you turned to and said, boy, if only I knew, if only I had, And then a variation, you can answer either one. What did I get, either from supporters, from benefactors, from Unite America, from other politicians, that made what you're trying to do as an independent easier? So this is about the journey. Tell us about the specifics of running this campaign.
You go first, okay. Well, when you say it's a turnkey operation, clearly you don't know the Democratic and Republican parties in South Dakota. It is not a turnkey operation. There are a lot of issues, and I know a lot of Democrats and Republicans that are running that are not getting support from their party. And I can tell you right now, the support I've received from Unite America far exceeds the support that they're getting. With Unite America, I have a home. I didn't think I need it, but when you're running, you feel like you're on an island. You're the only one there. I have a husband who's incredibly supportive. My kid, when I told him he was running, he goes, well, duh, you are Superwoman. So I have that support system, but it's different to be in that mindset all day. You're on an island. So you know what? Unite America made my island bigger. I'm not the only one there. So I'm thankful to have all of you there, to have that conversation, to have different resources available, strategists, writers. Financial support is huge. An endorsement, you don't think it means much, it means a lot. So to receive the Unite America endorsement was very big for me. People in my community, all I did was post it on Facebook, and it was a conversation for 2 weeks. That allowed me to have more conversations with the people, and that's really important.
You're right, it's all hard. There's no way to dress it up. I told a gentleman I'm working for an endorsement 2 days ago. He asked me about it, and I said, look, you're a military guy. Sometimes you all have to solve tough problems. I said, here's the way I think about it. It's the old, I used to collect Reader's Digest quotable quotes. I'd rip out the page, and it was always a page of them. I had a big file like this when I went to college. And one of them was, the beaten path is most certainly the surest, but don't expect to scare up much game on it. That's number one. And number two, and this is just common sense, the best things, the things worth doing, are always the hardest. So we have to build it from scratch. And I will tell you, Unite America, while we're a long way from providing the support of a political party, I've received a lot of support. And since we started, technology's great. There's a gentleman who lives in Dallas that I met through Unite America that just deposited $2,700 in my bank account. That matters. That matters. I'm running a Facebook social media operation for $1,000. I get my message in front of 9,400 targeted convertible voters. I need about 500,000 to win. I tell people, we know how to do this. We know how to get this message out. And you know, we have 19 billboards we went live on. We found an innovative way to do it, and this is what you have to do when you don't have the infrastructure. You got to innovate. But of course, what's great is we get to talk about how we're innovating in our campaign, just like we need to innovate in the United States Senate. But we couldn't do $5,000 a month billboards. And then Brady, my campaign manager, said there's this, I forget the name, but they have electronic billboards. You can go online. You can upload your billboard logo. You give them your budget and pick your billboards. And so I've told people, and I did a Facebook on it, a post, and said, here it is. People have been, when you need billboards, they've been begging me for them. I said, so we have them, now fund it. Okay? Send me dollars, we'll throw it right into the budget. So, you know, it's challenging. I'll tell you, here's the one thing, I'll wrap up with it, I think that would make the biggest difference that people can do and we need to do around the country. We need local chapters. We need a grassroots organization in every state, every congressional district, all the major cities. That's the one thing that would give us a network of like-minded people that candidates anywhere could plug into.
So I liken this to a startup. You know, my experience, my background's in startups, and I have a lot greater appreciation for the challenges that they face now that I'm doing my own. It truly feels like that. There's a lot that we don't know. Unite has provided a ton of support in terms of trying to make sure that we make deadlines and that we understand what we don't know, but there's so much to learn. I'm used to being an expert in my field, and I feel out of my comfort zone a lot, and that's frustrating for me. And so that's a challenge. And I'd like to reiterate what Craig was saying, that really what we could use the most is boots on the ground. And in environments like this, where we can share ideas, and we have the background, the support to be brave. Because I don't think, and I was talking to Scott a little bit about this before we started it, we're not going to get elected by just doing the same thing. We're going to have to really step out there and be brave and be consistent with the whole notion of what is an independent anyway. And we can push those limits. I'm not going to just go in between the lines. And so we have permission to do that. And I think someone said that this morning is we have permission, it must have been Sherry, to talk about what other parties are not talking and what the parties are not talking about. And in Colorado, it's things like Tabor, and I know Andrew will just kill me because he's always like, don't talk about Tabor. It's like, I want to talk about Tabor, okay? And because nobody else is going to talk about Tabor. And so it's the courage for us to step up and really step outside the box by having a group like this that we can be with. But boots on the ground. We need more boots on the ground. The petition process was hard. It was really tough, and knocking on all these doors is really going to be tough too. We can use some help.
Running a campaign is a lot like running a startup. I
There
really
are
agree
no
with that.
options. Let me repeat.
You have to have a vision. You've got to sell the vision. You've got to build a team. You've got to raise money. You've got to build an organization. You've got to organize, mobilize. It really is just like having run a couple of businesses. It is very, very similar. I think being a legislator is a little different, but running a campaign is definitely a lot like being a startup. I also agree with what Cory said. I think the party infrastructure, at least in my state, is overrated. I know I would take what we have in 2 seconds over what the Republican has, first of all, especially since I'm going around the state and I go to these Republican booths at the county fairs and they omit the Senate candidate, which, so I definitely would rather have what we have than what he has. And I will tell you, I have such pride in being an independent, and I hope all of you do. I have such pride in being affiliated with these three people and with everyone else in the movement. You've heard me tell this story, but I will never forget. We did a national rollout in February, the five of us running for statewide office, and we traveled to 5 different cities, and we each took turns speaking at the different events. And I just was so proud because it's so clear that every one of them is doing it for the right reasons. They're doing it to try to move our country forward. They're doing it to try to represent the people in their states. They're not doing it to play party politics. They're not doing it to win arguments. And so I have such pride in being affiliated with the movement. And in terms of what we need, every campaign needs money. I never understood this until I was a candidate myself, why money is so important. But money enables you to get the message out, period. We're running a commercial in most of the state of Maryland right now, and it's completely transformed our campaign. And that costs a lot of money. Right? We're doing a lot of other things all over the state, the road signs and digital and everything else, but that all takes money. So money is part of the equation.
So we're going to open it up to questions, and so as you prepare your questions, I will tell one story that gets to why having multiple candidates in multiple places does create a remarkable synergy. It puts some form around the idea of an independent, and Neal is exactly right. I had the same reaction when we had our 5 national candidates together on this road trip around the country. I, since this began, have been trying to reach out to David Brooks, the New York Times columnist, because he's writing about how the two parties are the problem. We need something new, and I'm screaming, in my home at the dogs, like, we're doing it. And so I got his email address, and I emailed him, 10 or 12 times, and nothing happened. And the next year, I emailed him 10 or 12 times. We're a little further along. And then I had a student named David Brooks And so I'd get emails from him, and I'd see D. Brooks, and I'd click on it. It's like, you know, can I get an extension on the paper? I'm like, God damn. You know, so finally, we do this rollout around the country. And of course, I send the usual email to David Brooks, not the former student because he's graduated. And I come home, and there's a response from D. Brooks. And I'm like, wow, that could actually, and it's David Brooks from the New York Times. And what has caught his attention, part is because the world's changing, and he's waking up to the reality of what we're going to have to do. And part of it is because these folks together are bigger than the sum of the parts. And I think that's a great encapsulation of how, and it's just going to continue. The same is true with all of us in this room. So with that, I will turn it over to that one really fast.
Yeah, to Craig and Neal, because you're running at the U.S. Senate level, how are you going to handle, I can't get my head around this, how are you going to handle the reality of caucusing if you were to actually win? I mean, to be effective, you need to get into the committees. The way you get in the committees is through the parties, that's the reality. How are you going to handle that?
So I don't know if you in the back heard that. It's the caucusing question. If you are elected to the U.S. Senate, and it's for our 2 U.S. Senate candidates, how will you handle the caucusing question, given that the parties do run the institution to some extent?
So I was asked about this on NPR last week. I was on NPR for about a half an hour. So you should listen to that, because they spent about 5 minutes on this. So you do not have to caucus with either party. You definitely do not. And we've spoken to lawyers at length. We've spoken to a former Senate parliamentarian. And in terms of committee assignments, I think I would get committee assignments, even not, or Craig would, even not caucusing with either party. It's at the discretion of the majority leader. And I challenge that majority leader to not give me committee assignments. And I'm going to go to David Brooks, and I'm going to go to every other network, and I'm going to go to CNN and Fox and say, because of these ridiculous political partisan games, they're not even giving me a committee assignment. It is not supposed to work that way. Our government does not belong to the parties. There are no political parties in the Constitution. So absolutely, we will get committee assignments. We'll make sure that happens.
So you're saying a fight, another unite fight?
Bring it on. I would love to have that fight, and I would love to have it in a public venue, and I would love to get the American people. We need the American people to understand that our government does not belong to the political parties. It belongs to us. It belongs to you guys. It belongs to the people.
Let me add to that. That I agree with all of that. But this is a story about the importance of the thinkers. A year ago, when Neal and I met, we were in Philadelphia, and it was a meeting that pulled some great thinkers together. Charlie was there. About all of these issues. And Matt Dowd, he's a senior political correspondent at ABC News. I so loved the way he responded to that. Oh, you're telling me that if I get elected as independent, I can't be on a committee? You mean those things that these senators spend all day, every day doing, that's an utter waste of time? You mean that thing where they scurry around like rats to one meeting and another, and they sit down and their staffer says, here, read those 2 sentences because the TV's going to be on you in 10 minutes, and then they move on to the next? You mean I can't play that game? Oh. And then the other issues, office space. He said, tell them you can put me in a phone booth. I'm not here to play your games. I'm here to represent the people of Missouri. And then he launched into, and this is some out there stuff, and Neal and I spent a lot of time talking about this stuff. But Matt has spent a lot of time thinking about it. And he said, you know, you guys really need to think about, not only do we need innovation in the Senate, we need innovation in how a United States senator does the job. How can you help the people of Missouri best? Right now, it's all Washington-centered. What about flipping your budget, having a little bit in Washington and most of it in Missouri? And thinking of yourself, he says, you know what a United States Senator is? He's one of the most 100 most powerful people in the world. Anybody will take his call. Anybody will take her meeting. You need to think about how you can use that. And ask yourself whether sitting in these silly committee hearings, waiting for the camera to turn on, you know, so you got a little C-SPAN clip to tweet out that you're in D.C. doing your job. Ask yourself, is that is that really the way to do it? And I think there's a lot of food for thought in what Matt gave us to talk about.
I'm going to add and just pay homage to a lot of hard work that the staff at United America has done around the rules of how you can operate as an independent in the Senate, in the House, in various state legislatures across the country. We have the report that I think is in your packets that's being released. I think we have a Washington Post op-ed about it coming out on Monday. And this is just digging into the rules, discovering things, by the way, that many Senate staffers didn't know. I spent a long wine-besotted night with the former House parliamentarian for Congress where we went through, and he said, you can operate very effectively as an independent, but nobody had ever done the shoe leather that is required to just figure it out. So if you use the imagination that's been described here with the commitment to doing the right thing, with the fact that the system was never designed for the two parties we have, they're not in the Constitution, you can be highly effective, and that is really important. So let's go over here, right here.
So I want to take the same question to our two state level candidates in terms of how you see it at the state level, caucusing, and how you would play that game.
Same question for the state candidates. How would you caucus and or operate in your state bodies?
This is one of those questions I had no idea how to answer when it was posed to me. I really didn't, and it's like, okay. And my initial reaction was, why would I want to caucus with either one? Why would I not just meet with one group when it came to one issue that I was passionate about? And why would I? And it became and you're shaking your head, it became oh, you can't do it that way. And so that's part of my, frustration. And how do we accomplish that? I think, again, the report that you're talking about that is just came out. I read that last night, yesterday, and it does give some really, I think, concrete ideas in terms of how we can address that. So, not a great answer to that. Just acknowledging the question is extremely important, and the assistance that we're getting in terms of understanding how we can navigate within that is very important. But the average voter, they don't understand that system. They don't know. And really, we're in this for the voters. And the fact that the system and the structure is in place that's blocking it is part of why we're doing this to begin with. We'll figure it out.
So in South Dakota, the Republicans caucus behind a closed door and the Democrats are open. So I can immediately caucus with the Dems, but like I said, I want to blaze a trail. So I plan on trying my best to knock down that door for the Republicans. I believe in open government, and it pisses me off that they're doing their decisions behind a closed door. So I plan on doing everything I can, formal letters, send it into the press afterwards, whatever I need to do to make the discussion not about where I'm caucusing, is that why I have to choose. And why isn't everybody available, having the opportunity to know what's going on. An interesting development in South Dakota, the Republicans also sent out a letter to every single Republican candidate asking them to take a pledge that they would caucus behind the closed door, and they would not share any of the information with a privacy policy attached to it. I think that's BS. So let's change that. Is my approach.
And if you haven't met Owen Casas, who is in the Maine State Legislature operating as an independent, you need to hear him. So Joel, that was an Owen story that Joel told us this morning, where first of all, Owen says, look, I was a Marine. I'm used to being surrounded and outnumbered, so this is nothing new. And second, he holds up a mirror to the silliness of it. It was like, well, they're all meeting and saying to me, we have no idea what the Republicans think. And Owen saying, we can go ask them, right? And so, I think Owen must be on some panels. It's worth hearing him tell the stories about, it's not all easy, but you can do things that just penetrate people's limited imagination. Peterson.
I know 3 of the 4 folks on the stage, you guys are all winners, better than your competitors by miles and yards, not just for who you are, but what you're doing. But we need to be honest, right? We are going to have some losses. Hopefully we have 3 victories, 4 victories, but we're going to have some losses. So my question for you, Charlie, is how do we message those losses when we have this credibility problem? If a guy like Neal Simon doesn't win, and let's hope Neal Simon does win, doesn't that send a really powerful and sort of demotivating message to voters that, hey, this guy, this incredible
So let me repeat the question. He first began by saying that 3 of us were winners, but then he went on, right? But he then went on to say that he only knew 3 of us, and he qualified that. But at first, I was a bit taken aback. But the point is that some of these folks have won, some will win, some are going to lose. And how do we message the losses so that it's not debilitating for the movement? It's a great question. So far, the losses have really propelled us forward. So when Orman lost in 2014, and let me say parenthetically, had he won, our country is different, right? 1 vote in the Senate, he would have been that 1 vote, and so many things are different. So in some ways, it reinforces, like, he's not that 1 vote, but wouldn't you have liked to have had him win that vote? Second, he, still got 40-some% of the vote, was leading at Labor Day. So I think we can say, look, with more support, and this is absolutely true, if we could have closed that race, if we'd had more supporters, more boots on the ground, he wins. And then you draw the tactical lessons, which is the Democrat dropped out of that race. We thought that was great, then realized that he was turned into the Democrat in the messaging, and we probably would have been better off if at the state fair there were 3 people up there and he was in the middle. So I think you draw specific lessons, you focus on the positive, which is what's like a failed business or something else. You learn the legit lessons, and then I think the hard one is each race is going to be different. You're going to lose for different reasons in different places and so on, and that's a longer, more in-depth process of doing what you do around failure if you expect to get better. But since we're doing something really hard, the losses are difficult, and as I said this morning, wins are easier. Another, right there.
So several of you know me, you know where my questions are going to come from. Mine's structural, and I realize it'd be different between you because you're running differently for state and for Senate. But tell me how you designed the run. Do you have a manager in place? Did you hire a PR firm? Do you have a communications director? Do you have what structural pieces did you put in place? And I realize it may be different between the 2 of you, but these are some of the things that we're working through and trying to figure out how you've done it and what you've seen as successful and what hasn't worked.
So this is a structural question, things you've put in place, positions that are important to launch the campaign.
And are you interested in the U.S. Senate races or the state races?
Well, I'm actually interested in the 2 of them and how you separate. Mine is not what positions you're standing on. It is how you structure your run. You have a campaign manager. Did you hire a campaign PR firm?
Yeah, so I think it's one of the big things, and I focus probably on, as an independent, what things are more important than for usual campaigns.
I'm just going to go first because I can go quick. My background is photography and marketing. I literally market for a living. So I did not hire a PR firm. I am my own PR firm. I also have my own licensing for promotional items. I can buy everything at cost. I'm running a very lean campaign here. So that's why I figured I'd just go first, get that out of the way. I did, however, build a team. I believe it's a team effort. In South Dakota, our legislature only meets from January through March. We saw over 500 bills come across last year. One person cannot handle all of that. You don't know everything. So I built a team of people in the community who have different backgrounds and help me day to day. So that's where that's coming in on my side.
I'll go back to Matt Dowd. He told us a year ago, listen, they're going to tell you you need, all this structure and bureaucracy. You can't even run a campaign. He said, it's not true. You need a few good people. And he described it, and you launch. Well, that's basically what we've done. And part of that's by necessity. We've got money, but it's limited, and we have to figure out how to use it. Joel Searby was my strategic advisor and really launched the campaign. He connected me with Brady Quinn. Joel ran Evan McMullen's campaign. Brady Quinn ran the Utah operation, which was the ground zero of the Owen McMullen campaign. And then Aaron Nielsen was somebody who joined them from D.C. and became part of that effort as well. So Brady is my campaign manager, and Aaron is my deputy campaign manager. And then beyond that, the core of what we really believed we needed is a digital marketing and social media operation. And we have a guy who we actually pulled out of a larger company, or he was leaving a company, but we said, look, we'd love to be your first client if you do. Doing a great job for us. And then beyond that, You know, I have the person who's been my personal assistant in the law practice forever, who's splitting time. We have an office manager, and then we started hiring interns, and we got lucky. One of the interns that contacted us just graduated from the Kansas City Art Institute in video graphics art. He is a genius in filmmaking, and he's been turning out content. We have content that's every bit as good as Claire McCaskill with $30 million and blah, blah, blah. And I'm embarrassed to admit it. We paid him $1,000 a month because that's what we're paying interns. And then when the others left, we've started paying him more. And that's it.
So first, I have to just relish the moment. Did you all hear him call me a giant before? Because when I stand up straight, I'm about 5'9", so I just want to. There you go. And one other quick organizational story. So early on in the campaign, Joel Searby helped me launch the campaign early on. And I come from a business background. I've run a few companies. And Joel had put together this org chart. I asked him for an org chart. That's what I'm used to. What should the campaign team look like? And he put together this org chart. And it kind of didn't make sense to me. So I put a different one together that was based on my business experience. And I went and sat down with this friend of mine that had run a couple of senatorial campaigns. And he says, Neal, we have to have a talk. So I said, what are you talking about? He says, your campaign is McDonald's, and you are not the CEO, you are the hamburger. So that was an eye-opening moment for me to realize, okay, I'm the product here, I'm not the CEO of an organization, which is what I'm used to, by the way. So I had to get myself out of that. In terms of our organization, we're blessed. We've got an incredible campaign manager, Steve Krim, who's in the back, who ran Governor Hogan's campaign in our state. And then we do have a comms team. We've outsourced that to a company that has 3 people that work with us all part-time. We've got a field operation. I've got a guy who works for us full-time who organizes that. And we've been blessed with about 20, we call them campaign fellows. So one asset that I brought to the campaign that I had no idea was worth anything is that I have college-age children, and I have friends with college-age children. So that resulted in really 20 plus. We call them campaign fellows. They're full-time for the whole summer. A lot of them are going to continue to work for us part-time when they go back to school, and we give them a stipend, but it's very inexpensive, smart, passionate labor. They all care so deeply about this. We've got somebody who does the administrative part of this whole thing. We've got 2 people on our fundraising team. So we have built a bit of an organization, and it takes a lot of manpower. Campaigns take a lot of manpower.
You know, one thing I would add that is absolutely critical, I forgot, and this is the thing I put in place up front. I told them I got to have a general counsel. I'm a lawyer, and I know that I know nothing about election law. And then you have to have a compliance firm. And so those are 2 critical pieces that, in my view, are just kind of foundational.
Well, thank goodness we don't have to have that at the state legislature level. Oh my gosh, that's just scary. Again, likening this to a startup, I think one of the things I've learned is it's fluid to some degree. There's functions that need to be accomplished, and at different points in the race, you have different functions that are going to be more important than other times. And so our staffing has become very fluid. So starting out with a certain structure in mind, it's kind of changed over time. And now that we're moving into different parts of the campaign, there's going to be different skill sets that are more and more important. And I, too, have a 26-year-old daughter that's been very important in my life, and she's been helping me out a great deal. She calls herself my executive assistant. I don't care what she calls herself. She's just amazing, and it's great to have her support.
So we have to wrap up so we can get to other panels, but we're going to do a lightning round. 1 sentence, I'll start, and then we'll go down, just kind of encapsulating your big thoughts as you're here and in your races. I will say, as you're seeing, there is a synergy. So when Neal runs in Maryland, it helps candidates in other places. It draws attention to what we're trying to do. So all of this and all of you is bigger than one race, and that is part of the movement.
Maryland is a winnable race, and it's a United States Senate seat. And we all share this vision of trying to bring leadership from the middle and trying to bring this country together, trying to move us forward. And it could actually happen in Maryland. I feel like we've got a unique set of circumstances there with a weak Republican with a vulnerable incumbent with a campaign that has some momentum. So I'll just leave you with that thought. We have a chance to do this.
I think we have a chance too in Colorado to put some independents in the legislature. I'm really excited about that. One thing that continues to come to mind for me is be bold and be brave. We're doing this for the right reason, and there's a lot of really important things we need to accomplish, and so continue to be bold and be brave.
The thumbnail in Missouri is we have a Democratic incumbent, two-term. She has a below 50% approval rating. There's a huge anti-incumbent feeling. The Republican challenger just got elected to Attorney General 2 years ago. He spent a year running and promising he wouldn't run in the Senate race if the people elected him to the Attorney General on Inauguration Day. He started running for the Senate race. He has an approval rating below 50%. So we have a replay of November 2016. We have two candidates, mainstream candidates, that a majority of people are dissatisfied with. And it's a perfect opportunity for us. We just have to continue to execute our game plan, get enough money to execute it and expand it every day. We got 80 days to do it.
So it's not a sprint to the top of Mount Washington. This is a marathon. Hydrate and persevere.
All right, thanks you all, and enjoy the rest of the panels.